Hello, Wednesday, World Economic News. Right, let's start in the United States of America. Inflation-adjusted outlays per capita. Now this is to 2008, and it will have gone up since then. What we've got here is, I'll read it and then we'll see what we've got here. That's how much the US government spends in inflation-adjusted dollars per capita, which means it's adjusted for both inflation and population increase. And note that the graph is a logarithmic scale. Oh yes, we'll note that. 100 years ago, federal spending for each person was the equivalent of $200 in today's dollars. After FDR, with all his massive public spending, it was $1,000. This year it is over $12,000. And how long can this last? And we got the little hiccup yesterday. I think this 12,000 is kind of that the Washington spending number. Let's make it 3.6 trillion divided by the population of about 300 million, making about 12,000. I think that's the sort of number. And it is quite remarkable that the way it goes up and up. But it's still so much less than European government spend as a percentage of GDP. So there's room for more spending. Whether they get there or not's a different matter. Right, I've used this chart before, but I thought it was the place to put it in here again because we've got a bit of a theme going here. Number of Americans by average income. So individual Americans, average income. The blue bar over on the far left, 0 to $25,000. Let's call these poor people. Yeah, well, and there are about 73 million of them. Now, I did a quick add up of the other coloured bars, and they added up to about 77 million. So 77 million are other, and 73 million are poor. It's not 50-50, but it's very, very close, and I think that's quite significant. And you can see the red and green are probably what they'd call the middle classes or something. But the 73 million blue bar is enormously large. As I say, when you compare it to all the other combined at 77 million, nearly half are poor. It's only words, but if you happen to be in that blue bar range, you're really struggling at the moment. Not that you're really making out large if you're in any of the others except the end two. Right, this is vaguely interesting as a chart. Households are receiving more from the government than they are giving. The red line at the top are taxes paid by households. We're not individuals, we're households here. But we can see that the household tax went up and up until mid-70s, and then it went flat, and now it's going down due to things since the year 2000, and it's really going down quite a lot now. And transfer of incomes to households from the government has been going up and up and has crossed. In other words, households are now getting back in more from the government than they are actually paying up to Washington, which doesn't sound sustainable, but who knows about these things? Not I. This one is retail sales component as a percentage of total retail sales. The pump monkeys on the CN this, that and the other CBCs have been saying that retail sales are up at the moment, and indeed they are, but one of the reasons is that we can see the components of that retail sales factor for the CPI, it'd be, wouldn't it? Motor vehicles in black at the top, let's say they're flat. Most everything else is down except gasoline stations. Gasoline stations are doing well, not because they are pumping more gas, but they're pumping just about the same amount of gas, slightly more, I think, but for higher prices. And that is why the retail sales are up, because gas prices are higher. This one I've used again, but I'll use it again. Breaking down the consumer price index, college tuition is the thing that has grown and grown and grown so much and hugely in the last decade. It's far above everything else. It is a real bubble. Next is medical care, which in its own way is its own bubble, but I mean, we know how much medical care has gone up, and pro rata you can see how much college tuition and fees have gone up more than that. The green line, just in 2008 when the price of gas was going up, that transportation got up into second place but really dropped down when the price of gas went down. But you can see it's making a go for it again, and I don't think it'll be too long before it grabs second place back again. In a general thing talking about this, the Financial Times Stephen King article, that's the other Stephen King, writes, rising commodity prices are a permanent new feature of the new global economic landscape. Their ascent reflects the world's shift in economic power from west to east, and it is time we got used to it. I think what he's trying to say is basically the demand is coming from the east, putting pressure on the demand on the supply and demand side. And it just affects everything, obviously, because there are so many of them. Recent price rises have been extraordinary, so much so that Robert Zoellick, World Bank president, warns of a toxic brew of real pain. He was talking mostly about those in poverty, yet with food prices doubling since 2000 and oil and metals rising 3- or 4-fold, no one is immune. I know I'm not, but then I'm probably in the poor category. But going back to the first chart, so many people are. The Daily Telegraph in the United Kingdom, an interesting sort of way of looking at things. Interest rates, if the Bank of England are forced to raise them, could actually push inflation up, because housing costs, mortgages, are a part of the UK CPI. And if interest rates go up, mortgage payments go up, inflation rate through CPI will go up. Finish with Wall Street Journal and emerging nations reject capital plan. Having listened to the INET Bretton Woods conference and going on about this so much, I had a little chuckle about this. IMF delays program to help countries manage short-term inflows as Geithner blames China and others blame the Fed. Washington representatives of emerging nations rebuffed an International Monetary Fund plan to guide them on managing huge flows of capital into their economies, viewing it as a way to constrain their actions rather than help. Basically, the Eastern nations, after the Asian crisis, decided to have lots of money to spare. So they've got these huge quantities of treasuries is one way they decided to store their spare money. But also because they're doing so well now, comparative to the West, then there are great amounts of Western money flowing into the East, and it's causing them to have too much money. So they are imposing assorted measures to try and keep those flows out, basically, or at least constrained. And they still fear the IMF from the results of the way they were dealt with in the last Asian crisis, and are basically telling the IMF to go away, and they will deal with this the way they think best. They've got new confidence that has come with their money, and that is what money does for people. It gives them confidence. See you tomorrow.